The universes of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon share more than just a setting. Many of their storylines and characters mirror each other in shocking ways. The idea that history repeats itself is prevalent in both shows, with one reflecting events from the other, despite being set over a century apart. While the later seasons of Game of Thrones feature distinct plot lines, the first season of House of the Dragon showcases striking similarities to its predecessor, from character arcs to key plot points. Let's explore 10 surprisingly specific parallels between the two shows. The central characters. The main characters of both shows share eerie similarities. In Game of Thrones, Robert Baratheon and Viserys Targaryen are both reluctant rulers, struggling with leadership, yet they usher in peace that allows the next generation to thrive. As their reigns end, war erupts due to their death, with various characters fighting for the throne. The Greens and Blacks in House of the Dragon correspond to the Lannisters and Starks, with one faction eager for power and the other seeking justice. The rival factions, the Greens, loyal to King Aegon, and the Blacks, loyal to Queen Rhaenyra, are reminiscent of the Lannisters and Starks in Game of Thrones. Although the dynamics differ, both sides are driven by family loyalty and power struggles, much like the factions vying for dominance in Westeros. The deaths that spark rebellion in Game of Thrones. Jon Arryn's death indirectly triggers Ned Stark's involvement in the rebellion, setting off a series of events that lead to war. Similarly, in House of the Dragon, Aemma Arryn's death and the political fallout surrounding it push Viserys to remarry and set the stage for the ensuing civil war. The boar symbolism. Both shows use boars as a symbol of death and fate. In Game of Thrones, Robert Baratheon's hunt for a boar leads to his untimely death. In House of the Dragon, Rhaenyra's encounter with a boar signifies her strength and determination, mirroring Robert's fateful encounter. Children's fights with fatal consequences. The brutal consequences of children fighting in both series are stark. In Game of Thrones, Arya's conflict with Joffrey escalates into the death of her direwolf. Similarly, in House of the Dragon, Aemon's altercation with Rhaenyra's son sets off a chain of events that lead to devastating political repercussions. The wedding that sparked violence. Both shows feature a wedding that ignites violent chaos. In House of the Dragon, Rhaenyra's wedding to Lena turns violent when Criston Cole attacks Joffrey Lonmouth. Similarly, the royal wedding of Sansa and Joffrey in Game of Thrones becomes a pivotal moment of bloodshed and turmoil. Promises of the Song of Ice and Fire. Both series reference the Song of Ice and Fire, a key prophecy that drives many actions. In House of the Dragon, King Viserys asks Rhaenyra to protect the prophecy, just as Ned Stark recalls his sister Lyanna's dying request to protect Jon Snow. The potential fulfillment of that prophecy. Political marriages to prevent war. In House of the Dragon, Rhaenyra attempts to prevent war by proposing a marriage between her son Jacaerys and Alicent's daughter Helena. A similar, though unsuccessful, effort is made in Game of Thrones when Sansa is betrothed to Joffrey as a political move, which ultimately fails. The rival claimant conflict. Both shows feature intense conflict over rival claimants to the throne. In Game of Thrones, Daenerys is considered a threat by Robert Baratheon, while in House of the Dragon, Rhaenyra is treated similarly by the Hightowers. These rivalries are further fueled by political manipulation and the ambition of those in power. The pain of grief and loss. Grief triggers devastating events in both series. In Game of Thrones, the death of a loved one leads to significant political ramifications, while in House of the Dragon, the emotional turmoil surrounding the death of family members has similar consequences, including the tragic loss of stillborn children. These parallels show that House of the Dragon is more than just a prequel, it's a retelling of Game of Thrones with a fresh perspective. Each of these connections highlights how the themes of power, family, and loyalty continue to play out across generations.